So this Kuminga sign and trade situation has pretty much halted any official signings that the Warriors can make this offseason, and all signs are pointing to JK returning back to the Warriors. Yes, after all this time, JK might really come back to the Warriors, and the plan is for him to get shipped before the trade deadline next season. And if I was a fan of any other team watching this all unfold for the Warriors, I wouldn't feel bad, because the Warriors don't have anybody to blame but themselves. The Warriors had 3 opportunities to get rid of Kuminga. 3. They should have packaged him in a deal that would have landed the Warriors Dennis Schroeder and Cam Johnson. That deal would have been way more of a win if Cam Johnson was included. He's not only a much better basketball player than JK, but he's also a seamless basketball fit for the Warriors. They should have also gotten rid of him in 24 for Siakam or OG Anunoby. Or they could have even gotten Zach LaVine. And they should have moved him in 23 when the Warriors got bounced in the second round and Steve Kerr didn't give him no PT. That was the beginning of everything that was going to happen. The writing was on the wall, but they chose to ignore it. Moving him during that time wouldn't have caused any financial issues, as he was on a friendly contract, and we could have gotten at the very least a top caliber starter for him. He was one of the main assets that could have brought in smart and solid veteran players who can actually thrive under Steve Kerr's system. But the more you read about what's going on with this whole situation, the more you can just see that JK is just completely entitled. Apparently, I don't know how true this is, but I've seen a ton of reports on this, and it's the fact that JK turned down a deal that consisted of $150 million for 5 years. If this is indeed true, then either he or his team is completely delusional. I get the idea of trying to bet on yourself and potentially outplay that contract, but even that is also unrealistic. Prior to that deal being on the table, JK showed flashes of potential of being a shot creator, but he was never good enough to the point where he was approaching to being an all-star. He had one good stretch before the Warriors got bounced in the play-in, so to go from that to saying I'm pretty much going to make this quantum leap where I'm pretty much going to demand all NBA money next season, that's just completely ludicrous. And apparently he and his camp are searching for a deal that at minimum is the same one that the Warriors once offered, and he also doesn't want to come back to the Warriors. I'm sorry, but no one is giving you no $30 million based on what you might be able to do. He hasn't even proved himself on this team given the expectations that are set for him. Like, yeah, he does have some upside, but does it warrant 30 mil? Hell no. On top of that, the dude complains about not getting enough PT, which he did in 23, where he didn't play in the Sacramento and the Lakers series, and he was talking about how you can't stop the sun from shining. And in 24, he leaked the story to Shams, stating that he doesn't believe that Steve Kerr will let him reach his potential. This whole thing annoys me because it's as simple as this. If you don't produce or do things that allows the coach to trust you in the little time that you're given, then you're likely not going to get more PT. It's literally that simple. And people are going to say, oh, well, he's playing under Steve Kerr and he doesn't have the same leash or the margin of error as other young players in his draft class on bad teams. They get to make mistakes, but why not him? Well, guess what? Deal with it. The Warriors have an all-time great in Steph, and as long as he's on the team, the Warriors are always going to try to win. That means you have to play winning basketball, and that comes with a small margin of error. So if you happen to be under those circumstances, you have to find a way to work around it. Control what you can control. You can't help the fact that you got drafted to a team like this. So if you want to play so badly, if you want to prove your worth, then work with your coach and do whatever you can to get on the floor. If you really want it like that, then you shouldn't complain. Nobody in this league is entitled to anything unless you're established, meaning you're all-NBA, an all-star, a superstar, an MVP, etc. But another issue that the Warriors are running into now is that since they took too long to get rid of JK, it might be too late to actually get rid of him now for the sole reason that if they trade him, they're going to lack shot creation even more than they already do. Because as much as it makes sense to trade him, he's also the most talented young player that they have. We can't ignore the fact that he did provide some good level firepower against Minnesota, and without him, who else can replicate that? But even with acknowledging that, it might not even matter because as much as his entitlement and his lack of consistency towards his upside is an issue, the real issue is between him, Steve Kerr, and Joe Lacob. Let me explain. So it's clear that JK views himself as a superstar. The front office and even Draymond also seems to agree. But guess who doesn't? Steve Kerr. Kerr has publicly expressed to the media many times that he envisions for JK to be more of a system player than the system. He wants him to be a connector or a hub that can play off advantages, or this high motor athletic talent who can guard and get on the boards relentlessly. But JK clearly doesn't do any of the stuff because he views himself above all of that. Kerr views JK as a completely different player than how JK views himself. That's why Kerr constantly benches him, because JK is not doing the things that Kerr wants. But on the other hand, JK wants to lead. But the problem is, the rest of the league views JK the same way Steve Kerr does. No other team out there wants to give him anything that aligns with how much he wants. I mean, for crying out loud, the only team that stepped forward was Sacramento, and they offered a deal that included 2 first-round picks, Devin Carter, and Dario Saric. So they gave us draft compensation, and then 2 players that are not rotational players. That's how much they care about getting JK. Every other team is just crickets. Straight rumors, but no deals. The only person that constantly raves about JK is Joe Lacob. Lacob loves Kuminga. He deadass thinks that this guy is going to be the next LeBron or something. He's the person who's been an advocate for this 2 timeline thing, and it reminds me of the whole Calvin Booth and Mike Malone situation in Denver, where Booth wanted Malone to trust his young players more, but Malone was playing Russ because he trusted him more. And it's the same thing here in Golden State. But the reason why you likely haven't seen Steve Kerr get fired yet is because Steve Kerr, Draymond, and Steph are viewed as one. Which is why I think that after Steph retires, Steve Kerr might either get fired or he's going to step down and he's not going to remain with the franchise for long after Steph and Draymond retire. Lacob and Kerr also don't have the same vision for this franchise, and because of what I said earlier about Steph, Draymond, and Steve Kerr being as one, when the captain decides that it's the last ride, the employees are going to have to find work elsewhere.